Hello, and welcome to some Derps Talk About Games. I'm your co-host, Mango.
And I am your co-host, Buddy. I don't know why I yelled that really loud.
Probably because you're so excited
I
for
am so
Overwatch.
excited for Overwatch, I guess.
Which is what we're talking about today. But before
Indeed.
we do that, buddy, why don't you tell the folks at home what we do on this podcast?
Well, it's pretty simple. We like to talk about video games and regular games, like tabletop games, just lots of games, I guess. All kinds of games, except board games, which we've never talked about.
Yeah.
You know, anyways, moving right along, Overwatch is the topic. But before we get into that, we have other things to talk about. For instance, tabletop games that got played.
I don't think nothing
anything
happened.
got played.
Mark got sick. Chuckles had to watch Omar do comedy, so he didn't do Hell's Rebels.
Right.
Yeah, so if this should hopefully go up tonight, and so tomorrow there should be Hell's Rebels, barring like an international incident,
A catastrophe.
Yeah, and then next week we should be back to
Normal gameplay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, we've obviously been playing lots of other games in the meantime. I don't know how much I want to talk about this, because I imagine we're probably going to do our own episode on Stellaris, but obviously...
Yeah, we've been playing a bunch of
is the
Stellaris.
game.
Yeah.
Besides Overwatch. Like, last week was just, like, Overwatch. I played a little League. And then Stellaris.
Yeah, you've been playing. I played like maybe 2 or 3 games on this patch of League, which we've gone over a bit. You don't like it, right? Like I haven't really formed an opinion of it, but you think it's still too rough to really...
I like it in theory. I think it's just when you're Riot and you're a very rapid patching company, when you do tons and tons of changes in the middle of the season, kind of out of nowhere, the end result is that you get super rough cuts that get revised down the line, and I think we're in super rough cut mode, basically. Stuff like Blood Razor, which we didn't really talk about some of these things, but Blood Razor just is not worth it. All of those Devourer junglers are now terrible, because Blood Razor is just bad. The removal of boots has impacted me, because my go-to top laner, Olaf, depends a lot on Ghost, and Distortion used to be a huge buff for Ghost, and now Ghost is bad. It's just really bad. And so, it's those kinds of problems, right? Those kinds of things that are suboptimal, I guess we could say. But... yeah, they'll get their shit together. I like some of the stuff I've seen, even in the first patch. They're decreasing the Ghost cooldown to 180 seconds, and the movement speed now scales with level, so it scales up from 28% to 45%, which is kind of it starts in the same place it used to, but it just gets better and better and better. So I think like that. This is a good buff. Blood Razor gets 10% more attack speed. It does 1% more of the target's max health. Right. A lot of these mages have changes, buffs, nerfs all around. All around the middle and back again. They even hotfixed it, which is
Yeah, that's always indicative of some craziness.
Yeah.
Well, for me, I beat Dark Souls 3, started New Game Plus, beat the first boss, started a second character, beat the first 2 bosses, and I haven't played since. But it's a great game. It's a really, really great game with a lot of depth. It's not perfect. I'm probably going to spend the next couple of weeks watching lore videos to see what everybody thinks everything means. But it's, I'd recommend it. I put 60-something hours into it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yep. And I think eventually I'll go back and do some other characters. Just because I want, I didn't even, do any of the PvP stuff. Didn't really do invasions or counter invasions, because I usually only embered up when I went into boss fights. Yeah. But it's excellent game with a lot of cool stuff in it.
Fair enough. But then the other game, I guess, just to tease it, the other game I've been playing is Stellaris. I am currently, since its release yesterday morning at 9 a.m., I have 17 hours played.
Wow.
So that's ridiculous. Honestly, I'm not quite sure that I'm super up on it yet. My general path through the game, just for all of the lovely listeners out there, my general path through the game has been at my first playthrough. I obviously didn't know all that much about what I was doing, and I got basically sandwiched between two warring empires that wrecked me. And so I restarted, and then my home system did not have a single satellite or nothing for me to mine or research, no mining, no research stations, none of that stuff. So I was just like, well, fuck this. So I restarted again. And in my most recent playthrough, I've done a couple of things differently, and I'm now in the mid game, probably is what we would call that. I think it's good. I think there's a lot of depth. But some pieces of this are more complicated than what I'm used to with Europa Universalis, especially most notably the ship construction, right? The ability to individually construct each ship to be kind of optimal is one of the things that I can tell there's just I could spend hours pouring through kind of stats on these kinds of things to see what, where to make the best kinds of changes. And I don't really have a good handle on that system, but otherwise, I don't know. It's good. It's good. It's not quite EU4 for me yet, but it might get there.
Yeah, no, I've played less than you. I've played 6 hours at this point. But I'm excited for some of the modding stuff. I'm looking through the workshop now, and the most popular ones are of course things like new colors. There's a 40k Twilight Imperium reskin.
Wow.
There's a robot one. There's the Blorg, of course. The Blorg being the race that the developers played in their pre-game launch or pre-launch live stream over the past couple months. There's some flags, but then you get. I love looking at these because you got to get deep into it. It's there's a cat girl race. There's a Vape Nation race available.
Oh God.
It's the what it was it Ethan Klein the dude the dude that makes fun of the Vape Nation people. So I'm excited for real people to get their hands on this. I read some of their blog posts about modding it, and it looks great. And I'm super excited to use some multiplayer. I'm sure we'll end up doing a multiplayer stream at some point, even if we don't end up doing a full playthrough, because that would be a long time. But I think it'd be pretty.
We honestly should have just done it today. You know what I mean? When we were both kind of fumbling through the game. But too late at this point. Obviously.
Yeah, it's not like I wasn't working today or anything.
Oh right, yeah. I mean, work.
Yeah.
From home.
I was working, buddy. I don't know what you're talking about. Definitely gonna cut this out.
Oh, good. Anyway, I completely lost my train of thought.
Anyway,
whatever. Overwatch. So, talking about Overwatch. Let's talk about Overwatch. Wow, we actually got through that first part in 10 minutes. It's a record for us.
That's for you, Zhao and Enoch.
Yeah, this is for your friends of the cast, right? Okay, so Overwatch obviously is coming out soon. The open beta was over the last weekend. It was way better than I ever expected. I did not expect to like Overwatch very much. Spoiler alert. I thought I was going to find it tedious, uninteresting, and I thought I was going to fall into the kind of FPS malaise that I typically fall into in games like these, where I'm not good at FPSs, and it's tough for me to see a path to goodness, almost, if that makes sense. Like, a lot. So, okay, I actually have to back up even a step further than this. A lot of my time as a gamer is spent, like, very kind of directly with, like, the game, right? Like, with the text of who, this is why I know just, like, random offhand things like, oh, did you know that Morgana's auto attack range is 425 units? It's like, yeah, I know that because I look at these kinds of stats and I figured this kind of stuff out. But FPSs are notoriously vague when it comes to this stuff, right? FPSs are not RPGs and they don't pretend to RPGs. And so numbers are typically not that important to them. And explaining how things happen is also not that important to them. And while Overwatch does fall into this to a certain extent, which bugs me, obviously, I also think that it does a better job at this than most other games. It was extremely clear to me, almost from kind of minute one, what things I could be doing better or worse on the different heroes that I was playing, right? Just from an intellectual standpoint, right? Not from kind of like a gut check standpoint, which is, I think, what kind of... this is what, when I played Call of Duty, whatever, Modern Warfare 3, I think was the one that I played, multiplayer, that I didn't get that same... There wasn't that same engagement with my brain about... This is how you would do better. This is how you improve. So Overwatch having that for me was that was the defining thing that got me hooked into the experience.
Have you ever played Team Fortress 2?
A little bit, not very much. Team Fortress 2 is also... it also kind of had this same problem. And I think another piece of it is that because kind of everybody's new to every Overwatch and everybody's bad, I didn't get that feeling of being matched up and just getting, like, destroyed over and over again by somebody who's played 2,000 hours of the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's nobody at that level of it, so we're all kind of starting in the same spot without too much trouble.
Yeah, not only that, but they have like, auto matchmaking, which Team Fortress 2... did not for a very long time, and I don't think it's very good. I haven't played it in a long time. For reference, I have 161 hours in Team Fortress 2, and to me, this is kind of like the natural next step for that type of game, especially considering what Team Fortress 2 has become. Not that it's a bad game, but that it's, there's a lot of focus on like the hat economy. With what's the old joke? Team Fortress 2 is the most advanced hat trading simulator, and it even has an FPS mini game. And so I was happy to see this game kind of take back that type of model of game. Overwatch wants to pretend to be like part MOBA, but it's really a class-based shooter where the classes are people instead. And not that there's anything wrong with that, and I love it. It's just that's what it is. And a fair number of heroes feel like Directorate, like Widowmaker and Torbjorn and Junkrat are pretty much are pretty close to one replicas of the sniper, the engineer, and the demo man.
Do they have? I haven't played Team Fortress in so long. This is my experience with Team Fortress is I got the orange box for my Xbox in college to play Portal and Half-Life 2, and I loaded up Team Fortress 2, and I probably played 45 minutes. I don't think I cracked an hour. So are there like ultimates? Like
no, that's one of the things that makes it. So Team Fortress 2 has less classes. There's not ultimates. There's crits, which are semi-random, which a lot of people have an issue with. And there's some other things too. Like Team Fortress 2's big thing was that as they updated it more and more, you could get drops that were side grades for your weapons to do different things, and that's kind of how it evolved. Whereas in this game, the class is, or the path is pretty clearly they will add more heroes for that kind of thing, which I think is a fairly solid plan. But it's it's got the same kind of route. But there are also some very specific design decisions that I think Blizzard made to really drive this game in this kind of like in this direction they want, which I think is kind of like this like relatively short kind of like play a couple of games when you have a minute, and it's kind of like really easily uber competitive. Like, you know, it feels so satisfying to win and so devastating to lose a close game. And I think that's a great thing. And I think part of the things they've done for this are like very specifically the fact that every single match type is timed. There's no capture the flag. There's no death match. There's no there's nothing that takes an indeterminate amount of time. The only thing that can take like more than like say like 15 minutes is maybe a neutrally contested point where no one takes the point initially, and then overtime gets drawn out a little bit. But this kind of thing combined with kind of the high value of big pushes really makes the game close out quickly and kind of decisively. And while there are tense moments, it rarely ever comes down to like a slog, and I think that's really important for keeping this game fresh and keeping it playable.
To a certain extent, I agree with you. I actually kind of wish that there was a little bit more... see, I hate to say this, but I kind of wish there was a little bit more downtime and that there was, like, more involved. One of the things that gets me about Overwatch is because the matches are super short, right? And they are, from the get-go, right, hyper-kinetic. I have a tough time. Sometimes I feel like that keeping that cadence of like action is bad, right? I think that other games, I think League survives through this problem because it also has like other things to do on the map that aren't necessarily, like a gank or a team fight or a crazy play. So like, I can go, just me going and warding something right in League of Legends. That's like 45 seconds of like not super intense, or like just even rotating around the map, or like going and clearing a lane, right? Overwatch lacks those moments, which gets to me a tiny amount. And I kind of wish they were there. God, I don't know. It's tough because, like, at one time I wish that it was there, but on the other hand, like, I think you kind of have to really radically redesign the game in order to inject that kind of a flow between like moments, right? I actually think that this is one of the things that has drawn me to McCree specifically. Mango knows. McCree is the champion I played most. I played 4 hours of McCree over the course of the whole weekend. And I think, and because of how I play McCree and because of what I think McCree's strengths are, which I'll talk about in a minute, it got me into that into that mindset of, okay, right, like how can, like, now I'm not firing at an enemy, right? But I'm also not wasting my time. Like that tension is really tough, I feel like, because it always feels like if I were to go spend the 45 seconds, quote unquote, placing a ward, doing whatever equivalent thing, that's a huge time waste for my team. So I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I get what you're saying. I think that's a different game, almost. Right, like that's something like maybe that Paragon, the game by Epic that it strives to be. I think this game wants to be super kinetic because that's what Blizzard thinks makes for a better game. But like, I understand what you're saying, that like that kind of like, I think this game is about iterating fast and learning your character over a lot of short matches rather than trying to kind of figure that out with like make those iterations within a match, if that makes sense.
You know what, I'm actually kind of thinking about this. I actually think I'm wrong. I think I'm wrong for a different reason. I think I'm describing something different. So what I really think I'm describing is here's what it is. This is what bugs me, right? Like, let's say yesterday I had a match against 4 Torbjorns on defense in the Mexico map, whatever it is, the Southwest maybe Highway 66 is the map.
Okay.
We kept trying to push out of our base, and there were just 4 Torbjorns and 4 Torbjorn turrets, and we took out, we would get behind Reinhardt, and we would take out as many of the Torbjorn turrets as we could, but we just couldn't get through all of them in enough time, and so, it was almost impossible to push out of that base, and so we had 5 minutes or whatever to get on the cart and move it, but we barely got anywhere, the payload. That was frustrating. Because I was doing the same thing over and over with plenty of different heroes, right? Like I tried sniping from real far away with Riddlemaker. I tried, using someone like Pharah or Junkrat to kind of indirectly damage and get these turrets down. I obviously played McCree because he was kind of my go-to champion on attack, defense, whatever. And the game was the exact same, right? We just kept going out, we kept dying, we kept respawning in base and doing that over and over again. There wasn't another option, right, to explore. It felt like the only thing we could do was hit the payload, right? There was no other strategy besides sit on the payload and get destroyed by these Torbjorn turrets. Maybe maybe kill 1 or 2 of them and then get team killed effectively, and the Torbjorns that we killed respawn and rebuild their turrets, or they don't even die in the first place and they rebuild their turrets. Do you see what I'm kind of saying? Like there was no strategic diversity in that thing, right? I felt like the only thing I could possibly do was just throw myself into this Torbjorn meat grinder, and I don't. Does that make more sense?
I see what you're saying. I think that might be a symptom of the thing that you were talking about before, which is nobody's that good at this game yet, right? Like remember like the first couple games of League or maybe whatever first MOBA you played, because that's generally a more indicative of experience. Where you faced this champion that just kept shitting on you and you didn't know what to do about it until like.
Yeah.
I feel like we're kind of in that stage of Overwatch right now. I feel like eventually we'll figure out how to deal with that. I guess it is frustrating in the interim. Can I ask, were you playing with other people you knew, or were you playing solo?
No, I was playing with a couple other people.
Okay.
It was like me and Sang and Charles and Daniel.
Okay. Just because at least then you kind of get, like, you avoid the trick. Like, that is one thing that I think will keep... that it's going to hurt this game from from kind of a solo play perspective, is that trickling is this game's worst enemy, like going in one at a time. I think it's hard to get people you're not on voice chat with to not do that. And it seems to me like not a lot of people are using the in-game voice chat, which I think is a symptom of people not wanting to talk to random strangers online in general. But I don't know. Like that's a separate topic. That's a separate topic we could go into later. But like
that's definitely true. I definitely see what you're talking about, and I 100% agree that like there is a counter to this stuff that we weren't necessarily seeing. But the problem is I actually felt as though we were cycling through a lot of different kind of attempts at counters, right? Like obviously Pharah plays a lot differently than McCree, and we still had the same problem, right? And I don't know. That was just kind of frustrating. But to go back a minute to what I was talking about with when it came to McCree, I don't know. Well, we don't actually have to. If you want to say so, if you want to respond to that, feel free.
Oh no. I think that's it's definitely frustrating, right? Like it's no amount of me sitting here or anyone sitting there and being like, well, get good scrub, or like well, if it, or the nicer version is you'll eventually figure out how to deal with that. Will make it not a frustrating experience. And I guess it's kind of like do the good moments in the game, do the fun matches, the intense matches that you love. Do those outweigh the frustrating moments by enough to let you to keep you interested in the game? And I think that's something we're going to figure out very quickly when the game launches. Because if let's say this 4 Torbjorn strategy isn't really beatable by any configuration, or it's extremely it's some then the game's going to very quickly die. I'm hoping that's not the case. I suspect that that's not the case, but we'll see when that happens, I suppose.
Yeah, I feel that. I think what it comes down to is like in something like League, there's a lot of varieties of kind of what's happening on the map. So even if I'm losing my lane really terribly, right, mid could be having a good time, right? Or someone is split push. You know what I mean? If we can't beat them in team fights, we can just split push, you know. It's that kind of thing, right? But if we can't get through the Torbjorn rush, I felt like there was no other. I couldn't think of any other strategy, right? Besides, you know, we tried the Pharah thing. I tried Bastion. We tried Bastion Reinhardt, which was probably the most successful version of it. But even that didn't work out. So I don't know. I think it might just be we haven't found the answer to this yet. But I don't want to shit it, you know, like I don't want to shit on it too much because I really did like it and everything. It's just, that's like my big weakness is that it feels like there's only one way to win, and
I mean that's the nature of like a single object, like a payload game. You have to push the payload, right? Like you can't, you know, like in League you get like there's not as much strategic and diversity in League because the game's not designed to have that kind of like. The strategic diversity
I don't think it needs to have that much, but there's definitely other strategies that work, right? And this is something that so to finally cycle around to this, right? This is why I like McCree so much because McCree is basically the best duelist in the game. His Fan the Hammer has so much burst damage, and he has like, you know, on demand CC. My favorite use of McCree isn't to sit on the payload because I think that's where he's weakest, right? Which is kind of bad to a certain extent, right? Like, if a Soldier 76 sitting on the payload is just going to be way better than a McCree sitting on the payload, I feel like. What McCree wants to do, and what I do on McCree, right, is snake through, you know, like the buildings, like the corridors, right? Because inevitably they have a back line, right? I also think that certain champs like Reaper is built to do this. You know, like they have a back line. They have a Mercy or a Lucio. My favorite are Widowmakers, right? Like to go up onto the rooftops and find like the Widowmaker, and you just, you know, flashbang, fan the hammer, that kills anybody but a tank. And I think that's where McCree is at his best, right? You have your Reinhardt who sits on the payload, right? That's where Reinhardt belongs. And then you have other champs who are very, very good, you know, like even offense champs or whatever, who are good and they're solid on the payload. I think Pharah and I think, you know, even people like Bastion work really well on the payload when he just, you know, sits there.
Yeah, I actually don't think that. I think that Pharah being on the payload isn't doing what she wants. I think she wants to be in the air more of the time than she wants. But I see what you're saying.
Well, so what I mean to say is, I mean, yeah, Pharah wants to be on the air, but the thing that makes Pharah unique is that she can pop into the, she pops into the air and comes back down, right? So I think Pharah can use the payload as almost like an aircraft carrier.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But she's tanky. Her weapon is, you know, relatively long range. She doesn't need headshots, right? Those kinds of things. And so, you know, that's how I played McCree, right? There are other champions on the other side of this that also like work in like the opposite cases. I think, you know, obviously Bastion, when you're playing defense, is someone who wants to sit on the point, get in turret mode, and just mow everybody down who comes through, right? But when you're playing Hanzo on defense, that's not, you know, like that's not what you're looking for, and I don't think it's optimal for Hanzo to be kind of standing still on the point, and a lot of the time he wants to be, you know, he needs a front line. He's like an 80 carry, right? Like he needs a front line. He wants to kind of play back. Same thing with Widowmaker, right? Widowmaker doesn't want to stay on the point even when she's on defense. That's like a waste of Widowmaker's kind of play style and ability. And so these are all the little things, right? These are all the little strategies that I think are really cool and interesting, and is where the game kind of like captivates me.
Yeah, no.
That was just, that was it. That was what I want to say.
Absolutely. I think that it brings kind of like, so I feel like the strategic diversity of, say, Counter-Strike Go is there, but I don't think it's very visible to the layperson. I think that's kind of daunting and kind of like impenetrable for a lot of people. I think that CSGO, that Overwatch has done the thing to solve that, which is, you know, kind of take the TF2 idea of very recognizable profiles and very distinct characters, right? Like the strategic diversity of CS:GO is all in the guns, and like it's, to a layperson, it's like it's rate of fire and whatever, and I'm sure that there are nuances that I'm missing because I don't play the game, but it doesn't like the difference between a tracer and a roadhog is very apparent to anybody. Whereas the difference between like an AWP and another gun, because I only know what one name of gun in CS:GO is not. And I think it's very good for kind of building out this differentiation of role. It also makes it a lot of fun for people who want to play differently, right? Like I play a little bit of everything, but like I can see that I like playing somebody like Roadhog. Big full front kind of wades in and doesn't have to worry about kind of like the kind of sneaking tactics that you like on McCree. I think that's good for bringing in a wide variety of people and getting people kind of that's a knight with a big fucking shield. That's awesome. And it's, that's not something you usually see in a shooter. And I think that's ultimately what makes this game so compelling, right? Is the ability to kind of do when you play Widowmaker versus when you play Tracer versus when you play Reinhardt versus when you play Lucio, each one of those games plays so much differently that you really get like this really cool, unique experience every time you play. It really keeps the game from getting stale, which is something that I was personally worried about, that like after enough iterations, the game would feel like kind of rote, and and I'm still afraid that this might happen, that after enough games they'll be like, well, when it's Ilios, you gotta play like 3 Tracers and a Reaper and a Lucio, and that's what you have to do to win, and that'll be, I think, that'll make the game uninteresting for me if the meta ever gets that far. But the fact that like you can kind of build these comps that, not like as diverse as say Teamfight versus Split Push and League, still kind of approach these situations differently, like focusing on knocking people back, like the kind of clump behind the Reinhardt tactic versus the spread out and try and find pick type things you can do with say a Roadhog as your tank. I think that's all very compelling, and I think that's what makes this game so interesting.
Yeah, I definitely think that that's the case. I fear the meta a little bit just because, I've played Blizzard games with metas before, like World of Warcraft. And Blizzard is not very great at the patching process, right? I think certain I think Riot is kind of the best example of this, but even they're not super great. Like, I can't really think of anybody who's like really good at patching PvP games. Probably because I don't play them super often. But I feel like I'm afraid because I don't think that WoW PvP patching is super great. I don't know enough about StarCraft to really comment there, but my understanding is that StarCraft PvP patching also isn't super great. So it's kind of like, are they going to make it work, right? Where they figure out how to make this game not fall into the rut of an unbeatable meta where if you get, the right combination of heroes, you just kind of shit on everybody. I actually think that one of the neat things about Overwatch is they have the ability to make hard counters. I think hard counters are bad in a game like League of Legends, right? If I say that Darius hard counters Tryndamere or vice versa, just kind of whatever, then as soon as I've picked Tryndamere and he's picked Darius, I lose. That sucks, and there's no fun in that at all, right? Because he's just a hard counter to my champion, and I think so League focusing on soft counters makes a lot of sense to me, right? If I have the skill on Yasuo, I can beat this Annie. But Overwatch can make hard counters because you can just swap your hero out when you die for no cost really at all. I guess the ultimate thing, but and I think that that's useful, especially to break down meta stagnancy. And I feel like that's a controversial point. I doubt that many people will agree with me there. But I think it would be really I think it'd be interesting, and I think it'd be kind of stupid to rule that out as an option for shaking things up and for designing new heroes.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. I think it's obviously good. It will take the form of something it's not like this hero's sole purpose is directly counter somebody else. It's obviously gonna, like, the hero would have its own personality, and then as part of that would end up countering some sort of unbeatable meta. But I think that I think that it's that on the hero swapping thing, that the cost of losing your ultimate progress is perfect. I think it's not so much that you're discouraged from swapping a hero out when you really need something different, but it's high enough that you don't just change it on a whim. I think that's kind of really important for kind of keeping the game consistent in a way. Like I'm sure this will happen at some point, but my experience at this point is not that, you take one objective and you're like, well, for the second phase, I want a different hero. It's, we're playing this way, and then we've hit this kind of unbreachable point or unbreachable setup, and so that's why we're switching out our comp, which I think is a good reason to switch a comp. I think the former kind of, it leads itself to this kind of like, well, the meta says you do X to win Y map, which is, again, bad. And I think that this minor cost on it does help kind of keep people in a groove it helps people keep people on a track when it's not super deleterious, which I think is great.
I think that's definitely true. I also think that to a certain extent, the maps, I like that certain heroes are better on certain maps, right? I think that that's natural, and I think that that's fine. I think that there are good Torbjorn maps and bad Torbjorn maps, and that's part of the game. And I think that also helps shake up this kind of, shake up and get around this kind of like meta problem almost, right? Like, if Bastion can just root up on defense on every map, no matter what, that's bad, right? That is exactly what we're trying to kind of combat, I think. And so, I don't know. I think, I hope, would be a better way to say this. I hope that they also, kind of use this map variety right. I also think, to kind of like wheel it around almost, I think that the map diversity is something that's a really big advantage when it comes to this stuff, compared to, comes to like first person shooters and everything, compared to something like League, right? There is no map diversity in League, really. Like, Dominion is shuttered, and Twisted Tree Line is like barely played, right? Everything is just about that one map of Summoner's Rift, and if you change just a tiny bit, just a little bit, right, it really throws things out of whack. But because of Overwatch's kind of lighter design scheme, it can get around that problem much easier, I feel.
Yeah, it's okay to let some champions, or some heroes rather, to use the in-game term, it's okay to let some heroes be better on some maps because they will be worse on other maps, and that's really great for kind of like pulling out this diversity, which I think is cool.
Yeah, I'm also excited to see. In a weird way, I almost felt like I played through I found the heroes I liked. Right, McCree, Torbjorn, right, even to a certain extent Zarya, though I'm not very good on her, and I think she's tough. And the heroes that I don't like, right, the heroes that I just don't want to play, like, I don't even know, Tracer.
You don't like Tracer?
I mean, she's, I don't know, she's just, like, not my kind of champ. To a certain extent, I feel like I could find myself come around to Tracer, but yeah, I don't know. Just super fragile champs like that get on my nerves.
Yeah, that's fair, I guess. I think Tracer is a very, very unique character, and I very much enjoy her for that reason. Just kind of like her. I kind of wish that every champion was as that had as unique a play pattern as Tracer did. I guess they have a lot.
Really? You don't, well, I guess as unique. I think every champion does have a unique.
You're okay, yeah. So maybe this is me going more back to like TF, but like Tracer is unique, kind of in the genre. I think kind of Mei, like somebody like Mei, is also very unique in the genre.
Fair enough.
I feel like a lot of the heroes kind of fit into existing archetypes. Bastion, Torbjorn, Widowmaker, Soldier 76, like that. Like that's Soldier 76's freaking theme is be generic.
Yeah, well, so I mean I get that, but he's unique, right? Nobody else. Yes, I don't think anybody else plays like Soldier 76.
You are absolutely correct that he is unique in Overwatch, right? Like each hero is distinct from each other. I will not contest that, but in the genre of first person shooters, or even as narrow as I think class based shooters, he is, a standard character, if that makes sense. Really, Tracer is fresh for me as someone who plays games in the genre. Soldier 76 is not.
Yeah, I also have a tough time with it. I think because I'm not. This is kind of like the first FPS that I'm in. I mean, Payday, right? Like,
sure.
This is the first like FPS that I'm into after Payday, right? So I think that. I'm less sensitive to that kind of thing. In the same way that I wasn't very sensitive to, I didn't play very much. I played a little bit of Dota in college, maybe 10 hours, cumulative. But League, it never bothered me that, there was some similarity between. See, I don't even know champs well enough. All I played was Dwarf and Sniper, and he doesn't really have a League alternative.
Like Caitlyn.
Yeah, I guess kind of, right? Like, and even, so like even then I don't feel like they were kind of like copies 1-to-1. And
sure,
even if they were, I think that would be okay, right? Because it's just about Overwatch is its own individual thing, and so even though Soldier 76 plays like the whatever M16 generic shooter guy from Modern Warfare, that's fine, right? Because I think that kind of that's like the lowering the difficulty bar to make it easy, I feel like.
Sure, I suppose. I don't know. That's I don't know. That's why I really like Tracer, though, is that she is so different than anything else I've ever played before. Even though I'm not particularly good at her.
Yeah, I think Tracer is probably the highest skill cap champ that I've seen. Reminds me a lot of kind of like the, like the Lee Sins and the Yasuos of the world. And to a certain extent, I like Tracer in theory, but just, I don't know, I think it's because she's, when I'm playing, when I'm playing like these hypermobile champions in League, like Yasuo or whatever, because I have that top-down view, it's a lot easier. But Tracer being first person, I don't have a great sense for how far for how far I've traveled with her jumps. And that's that's the kind of thing that would come with time. I've obviously seen some pretty crazy Tracer plays and outplays, right? The jump, sticky bomb. E out to wherever, go back in time to your place before is neat. Like that's cool. That's a cool combo. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's right. I'm not saying you have to like her. I'm just saying that's why I particularly adore her.
Yeah, Tracer's a lot like Widowmaker also for like that for me. I like playing snipers, but I like playing snipers when I can just not give a fucking hit body shots. Like, like this is what Hanzo is to me, right? Like, with Hanzo, you can just hit body shots and you're fine. But with Widowmaker, you're really losing a lot if you kind of do that.
You also have to charge with Widowmaker, which makes her significantly less mobile than Hanzo. Like you have.
Well, I mean, Hanzo, you have to charge up his arrows,
right? But you have to aim down sight with Widowmaker, and you have to hold it.
Sure. But there is no wait. Is there aiming down sight? I thought there was no aiming down sight.
Well, Widowmaker has it. Widowmaker has skill.
Okay, yeah, okay, sure. That's my point. that was actually something that was kind of rough for me to get around at first. Because my natural inclination, I think, with like a lot of people, is to get into sites. That kind of thing.
I think that's also kind of why this game feels fresh, is that we're finally coming out of the
Iron Sights era.
Yeah, with Infinite Warfare being the most disliked game trailer on YouTube.
Yeah. Oh man, jeez. I don't understand. I just don't understand. Yeah. And I think it's just because I'm not part of that Call of Duty generation, I guess.
I don't know. I've played a lot of Call of Duty. I don't really get it either. Doesn't seem particularly crazy to me. It's in space. Sure, it's
they're robots.
Yeah, I like I think
right, like
I think robots are pretty cool.
Robots are entertaining, if nothing else.
There's a robot in this game. There's two
robots. Isn't Zenyatta also a robot?
Yeah, I was actually thinking of Zenyatta. I forgot about Bastion.
I thought. I obviously was thinking about Bastion. I also thought that Reinhardt was a robot at first, but then obviously I saw that he has a guy underneath there.
He's a super old dude in armor, which I think that all of the archetypes are actually well done.
I think this is I think this is also a very, very smart thing that they can take advantage of. League, League does the same thing too, but because League is kind of nominally, obviously, Jinx having a minigun notwithstanding, League kind of nominally being set in like kind of a fantasy past universe, and Overwatch being set in the future. Like I'm kind of intrigued, by is there going to be a champion who's a hacker, right? Like those kinds of things. These are the doors that get opened for you, and obviously because it's based also kind of nominally on the real world, you get Tracer, who is English, and Symmetra, who I guess is Indian, probably. I always just assumed.
I have no idea.
Reinhardt, I think, is German. Mercy is German. I think
Mercy is Swiss.
Mercy is Swiss, fair enough.
Like
McCree
the Red
is
Cross.
Obviously American. I think Reaper is from Mexico.
Is he?
I don't know. Who the hell can tell with him?
Yeah, I believe Symmetra is from southern India. I'm checking her story right now. Just like light. She was raised in extreme poverty in the Vishkar Corporation. I don't know. There's a lot of lore here.
I wish the lore was more accessible, to be honest. I think it would be a nice way to like burn the 30 seconds in the top of the at the top of the match. But whatever. It's also not even in the hero gallery, which was just like what?
Yeah, it's only on like the Overwatch website.
Yeah. I don't know. I to a certain extent, League has really burned me on the idea of lore in these kinds of games. I don't even what is the context of all of these people who are in Overwatch like beating the shit out of each other? Are these like training simulations?
No, so I don't think the matches themselves have good context, but like the overall story is that Overwatch was an organization, and then it got disbanded because of whatever kind of tropey reason that we haven't played God. You played gods too much. The United Nations says no more gods playing for you. And then I think one of the shorts is Winston reactivating Overwatch, which is because Winston gets his lab gets invaded by Reaper, and Reaper tries to steal some info, and then Winston's like, I'm done with this shit, and reactivates Overwatch, which is like a violation of some treaty or some bullshit. Who knows?
Yeah, I saw that opening video, but I didn't really get it.
Yeah, I feel like the lore is cool, but it's not it is not there at all. Like League, the match to match Widowmaker and Tracer should never be on the same team. But obviously that's not the case.
Yeah, I mean, I've been. Man, I just really hate the League lore. And I don't want to be one of those people that like cries about the League lore because they retconned everything so that the summoners don't exist or whatever. I didn't even think the summoners were good. I just think everything about it was just bad. But I think Blizzard is great with their with their other lore kind of stuff, right? And I think that there is a lot of room for the kind of StarCraft 2 version of this, where the individual matches of StarCraft 2 multiplayer aren't they don't have any kind of lore setup or whatever. But there's still obviously like an overarching kind of story to that game. And I don't know. I play it for that.
Yeah.
I play, I love the lore in World of Warcraft. I even like the lore in Diablo to a certain extent.
Yeah, maybe it'll go somewhere. Who knows?
Who knows, indeed. I think it's also a little bit tough because when you have like an expansion based the kind of rollout, lore is easier to fit in, but when you have something like League where it's just kind of like, well, we're constantly adding stuff to the game and it's kind of arbitrary anyway, so
I mean, I think League's done a better job recently with like the different events. And I think that Diablo has done a good job with this where, like they're I don't know if the latest patch, because I haven't looked at the latest patch, but like, there's the new Barbarian area, or the Barbarian King area for the Heraldric Cube, or whatever it was. And then there was a new area in the not the latest patch, but patch before that, there was like this stormy island with a bunch of different weird culty stuff happening on it, which I thought was neat. I think it's possible to kind of build out the lore in that kind of like incremental way. I just don't know how it would manifest in Overwatch.
Yeah, and I also think that if you're reading kind of the Blizzard signs, obviously you are seeing that they are moving away almost from this model. Though I don't really know that I can really say that Hearthstone is representative in this way. But like Hearthstone doesn't have, it has very kind of hands-off lore, but that's also because it's borrowing all of its lore from WoW, right? And I actually kind of think that Hearthstone would be worse off if it didn't have the WoW lore. You know what I mean? Like if Hearthstone was just numbers on, like if it was completely loreless, obviously I don't think it would be good, right? In the context of like instead of having Sludge Belcher, you have Minion 72, right? And he just does what he does, and he has his numbers, and it's like that's uninteresting, right? But even if they had created a new set of lore for Hearthstone, I don't think it would have been as good as being able to kind of piggyback on the WoW lore, because they definitely hook people like me with that kind of thing. And I can see that, this is what Varian Wrynn would do if he was a Hearthstone card, right? This is what, Sylvanas does as a Hearthstone card. I've seen plenty of people who kind of make up those Hearthstone decks based on League of Legends or on, just kind of whatever. I think the same thing is definitely true for Heroes of the Storm, right? Heroes of the Storm, you get a lot out of Heroes of the Storm is them just getting mileage out of their IP, right? Out of their good lore having been good, right?
Even out of like their like Lost Vikings and Blackthorn.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, people, like super, super kind of arcane stuff. And I hope that Overwatch isn't. It kind of reminds me of. So when Wall-E came out, this is going to be really random. When Wall-E came out, Pixar released a trailer that was like, it showed all of the, like the Pixar movies that you think of, right? Like Monsters Incorporated, right? Like The Incredibles, A Bug's Life or whatever. And so they're talking about how they had this lunch.
I'm pretty sure you're the only person that thinks of A Bug's Life when you think of typical Pixar movies.
Okay, that's true, but whatever. And the Wall-E trailer was like, hey, we had this lunch and we talked about these movies, right? And there was this one story about a little bug, and then there was this one story about monsters in your closet, and then there was this one story about superheroes who, are illegal or whatever, right? And then it's like, and the last story we talked about on that lunch was about a little robot named Wally, right? And it kind of unintentionally set up that like everything after Wally was like a marked downturn for Pixar, right? There's like Up, which is probably the best, maybe if you want to like really argue for kind of Inside Out, and then you just have all this bullshit, right? Like The Good Dinosaur, Brave, Cars, right? Like, like all of
Cars
that kind of
too.
stuff. Yeah, exactly. All of this kind of stuff, and you're just kind of like, oh man, what Pixar, what happened to you? This is what I'm afraid of from Blizzard, right? I'm afraid that Overwatch is like, oh, well, like we've been riding high based on these IPs that we created in the early odds, right? And now it's time, and now it's time to create our first new IP in 20 years, Overwatch. And they're just going to be like, well, and just fall flat on their face and be terrible. Maybe that won't be the case. I hope that won't be the case, obviously. The opposite effect happens, right? DreamWorks went from let's make Shrek over and over and over again to Kung Fu Panda, which is one of the best movies in the last decade. That movie's so good! Shut up, Echo! For readers out there, listeners, you ready for this? Kung Fu Panda is better than the first Star Wars, 1977. Star Wars
my God! But
it's better than
that
movie.
It's
better than that movie. That movie is so overrated. Anyway, Overwatch. I have hopes and I have faith in Blizzard that they'll make Overwatch neat and interesting from a lore perspective. I've always said that I think single player in games like these are very useful from a tutorial standpoint. I think that I've always said this about League too, right? I actually think that it would be super cool to just kind of have like one level, right, for each of like the heroes or whatever, and it can just be it can be Highway 66 for McCree or what, whatever. It could be an established level. It's obviously doesn't have to be a custom thing, right? Where it teaches you the basics of McCree. Like McCree, the obvious combo with McCree being fan the hammer, flashbang, fan the hammer, right? You can basically kill anybody with all of that burst damage in close range. To kind of just have a little introductory bit that explains that to you in a safe environment is also a great way that you could even inject the lore into it a little bit, right? And I would like, that's my pie in the sky. I don't think it's gonna happen, obviously, but it would be so cool. It would be so cool if it did. And I think that the value of lore in games like these is kind of underestimated. Because the reason I picked McCree in the first place was because I like cowboys. That was it. The reason I picked Yasuo up was because samurais are awesome, right? And I don't know that I would have that same connection to, Yasuo, whoever else, if those lore details weren't there for me.
Yeah, so something that's kind of along these lines that I wonder about that our friend Charles brought up is how much of this game was Titan, with the canceled MMO property from Blizzard, which is supposedly what the scraps of turned into Overwatch. I think that'd be really cool to see what that was about, because I have a feeling that a lot of that lore stuff would have come out in an MMO, right? Imagine playing an MMO where you are a member of the Overwatch organization and the rival organization, which presumably whatever Reaper is part of. And I think that'd be really cool. I really kind of want to know where that where all that came from.
Yeah, I would be interested too. I think that this is kind of a better version. I feel like a more MMO-y version of this game would probably be worse to a certain extent. I actually do kind of wish it was free to play. Strangely enough, I think the free to play, if they had basically copied kind of the League model, where you have your free champion, your free heroes every week, but you earn up credits to buy heroes, is a pretty good model for a game like this. And I think it's tough because like on one hand the stuff like League, it's fine because you're locked in your hero the same thing every match, right? But if I'm a new player and all I have are the free champions, when we need a Widowmaker and I don't have Widowmaker kind of thing, like that sucks to a certain extent. But I think that you can just mitigate that by upping the percentage of the free to play champions in League. The percent is like 8%, right? If you had half of the champions free every week on Overwatch, to put these in kind of extreme terms, I think you solve that problem without
I don't
too
know,
much
man.
problem, too much trouble.
I think you kind of run into the same kind of like, imagine if you were against 4 Torbjorns and nobody had access to, say, like, Junkrat or somebody capable of dealing with that. Like, or up against 5 Bastions, no one had access to Genji, who can counter him with his E. Like, I feel like that's kind of dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it is a little bit dangerous. Like, I agree with that. I just feel that, like, is Genji a counter to Bastion? Sure, like 100%. But so is Widowmaker, right? So is Hanzo. So is Pharah, right? There are better counters, there are worse counters, there are X, Y, and Z. And if you just have enough of a free champion kind of like roster, even if you just have a couple, like all of the like easy, like 1 difficulty champions, right? Be super super cheap, kind of like the 450 champs. I think that would be. I don't know. I think that's kind of. I don't know.
I think you'd have to at least do something like. Free champions aren't on a universal rotation. It's random per player.
Or it's random per game. Oh, that would be so cool.
I don't know. The random per player at least, because then you have to then you don't get in a situation where it's like the people who have bought all the champions are like, no one's got like these champions aren't available this week, so we'll crush the freemium players with this specific comp designed to exploit that weakness, because there's not the kind of like gating mechanism that the League leveling system has.
Oof, that's kind of true. Though it does have at least I imagine that there's MMR, right? It seems to me that
there's a ranked mode, that it was not available during the open beta. I'm not sure if there's an MMR for free play. I also don't know. It might have been there. It also just might not have enough data, over the open beta to be matchable.
I mean, honestly, I think that's one of the great things about League of Legends is the
matchmaking system.
Yeah, well, it's one of like the unsung heroes of the game. I think that there's a lot that kind of attributed to like League's success, but the fact that they had a solid MMR system in place is probably like one of the core things I think that got. They got something like League out of the Dota roots and into the League popularity roots, if that makes sense. Because anybody could tell you how frustrating it is to just like load up into, if I were to load up into a game of Dota and play against Doublelift, I would kill myself, right? We would just get completely destroyed. And I think that the same thing is going to be true for Overwatch, right? The problem is when you have intense MMR systems, you have to kind of demand a giant user base in order to make them work out. And I don't know if Overwatch is going to just kind of have that by default.
It's a Blizzard game. I'm sure it'll be big enough.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be too. I also think that their other games have MMR. Arenas and WoW, and obviously StarCraft 2 both have solid MMR systems. So I don't think.
I think actually to kind of dig into it a little bit is one of the bigger things there is the 1 to 30 gating system, and maybe I think that the League like getting to level 30 in League is a little bit longer than it should be, but that introduction, so I could the comparison I'd directly make is something like Heroes of Newerth, where when you made a new account, you just started at 1500 MMR and you moved up and down from there. And so 1500 MMR had people that were average players and also everybody who was completely fucking new, which was a pain if you ran into a team that was like 4 new guys and you were like an experienced middle player. And the other team was just a bunch of middle players because they would usually win because, they weren't new. And so I think that kind of like gate, that 1 to 30 gate is actually pretty important. And I hope that like there's at least something equivalent to like placement matches in Overwatch that gives you a little bit of experience breadth. Or like,
yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think that's 100% true. I also think that Overwatch has kind of an advantage because each match is like super fluid. I don't think that it demands kind of like a role queue in the same way that other stuff does. And maybe this will change with time, right? Where, you know, like in League, right, you specialize into playing junglers, right? And so in Overwatch, maybe people will specialize into playing tanks and supports and everything like that. But for my money, I would actually bet that the opposite is going to be the case, that people are going to be very kind of happy to swap in and out of stuff. Because at the end of the day, even if I'm playing, you know, a tank or whatever, the mechanics of playing a tank versus the mechanics of playing an offense hero versus the mechanics of playing a defense or support hero, right? Like, at the end of the day, Lucio is still shooting guys with his dubstep gun, right? Like, that's just... that is always going to be there. And McCree is obviously going to be better than Lucio at shooting people with his gun, but the core philosophy of Lucio shoots a gun, McCree shoots a gun, Zarya shoots a gun, Hanzo shoots, or well, Bastion shoots a gun, binds it together so that I don't think specializing will be as big of a deal.
Yeah, I think I agree. Something I'm maybe concerned is the wrong word, but it'll be interesting to see is kind of player attitude towards matches. You know, historically with, like, say, with first-person shooters, dropping in and out of matches is not a huge deal, right? Like, it's no big deal in TF2 or in Call of Duty if, you know, mid-match, mom says, come get dinner, so you're like, fine, you turn off your Xbox or whatever. Whereas something like League, it's the complete opposite, right? Like, dropping out of a League match early is, like, you know, up there with committing genocide in terms, as far as League players are concerned. And I feel like for what Blizzard is aiming for with kind of like, you know, there's already the push towards esports with this, is kind of keeping the game short enough so that, like, you don't feel like you have to drop, like, you know, you'll rarely be caught in a situation where you have to drop out right now and you can't finish the match is good, but I still kind of think that they want to encourage people to stay through the match, but then they also have like hot joining, which I guess is great. Like, straight up, what do you think? Do you think it's for a ranked match? If somebody drops out, do you think it's better to have a hot join or not?
I have very complex thoughts about this. I think it's easier to do a hot join in a game like this compared to a game like League of Legends. Let's say in League of Legends I had to do a hot join, right? Well, I can't just erase the fact that we have a Nautilus in this game, obviously, so I have to adopt into Nautilus. And I also kind of can't erase the fact that this Nautilus that I'm, you know, the guy who I've hot joined into is playing a tank Nautilus build who's already built, you know, Cinder Hulk and Mercury Treads and Dead Man's Plate, right? And on top of that, I hot joined into, you know, like, I'm hot joining into a game where I got counter jungled all game, and so my Nautilus that I hot joined into is like really far behind. You lose all of that baggage with Overwatch. With Overwatch, when I hot join into the game, and I can choose whatever freaking hero I want, right? And that's a big advantage, I think, in terms of softening the blow to hot joining. At the same time, if it was me, I would split the difference for Blizzard. I would say that in ranked matches, you would lock it in the same way that you lock it in League, right? Like, you can't Alt F4 out of the game, come back in, choose a new match kind of thing. You Alt F4, you got to reconnect, buddy. Like, that match, you get to play again when that match is over. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But in a normal match, I don't think it's that big of a deal, and I think hot joining is something that's pretty natural for how those matches get played. I think this is something that Overwatch will probably take kind of whatever indicator from CS:GO that it can, you know. And I don't know, you know, I don't know CS:GO.
Yeah, I don't either, actually.
Or mechanics for this kind of stuff. So, you know, maybe they're more stringent about it, maybe they're not, but
the thing I'd be concerned about is, like, does having those two disparate systems make things make things feel inconsistent? Does it set the wrong expectations for players? Like, a player who plays regular all the time decides to try out ranked and drops out and gets penalized in some way for it. Is that like setting the wrong expectations for him? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. When you put it that way, I get it, but I also just see, because I would say, and this is because I'm coming from League, like I would say that there shouldn't be any hot joining, but maybe someone out there has a good case for being able to just jump out of a match.
No, I don't think you can. So personally, I don't think you can hot join ranked. I think that's you can't do it and have ranked be meaningful, because that creates these perverse incentives where people dump out of matches for the wrong reasons, right? Even if we presume people aren't being even if we presume people are being completely selfless, right? Like, you don't want somebody dumping out of a match because they think that they're doing terrible and maybe whoever joins after them will be better or something like that, or for more realistic reasons because they're frustrated and it's of less consequence to the rest of their team because somebody will replace them. I just don't think that. I just don't think you could have ranked be or you can't have somebody go to start playing ranked and get dumped into a match that's already losing and feel like that's a fair loss for them.
Yeah. Oh God, that would be the worst. That would be the worst.
Yeah. And yeah, while it sucks for the other 4 people on that team, I guess you're negatively impacting less people by having it be the 4 or 5 people that decided to stick around. Although that's another problem, right? If one person dumps and the rest of the team just, well, fuck it, and they also jump ship, that's also not that's not very satisfying game for the winning team. But I guess that's better than nothing, all things considered. I don't know. It's a tough question.
It is a tough question because on the other half of this, man, it is a really rough question. On the other half of this, you also have the consecutive games, right? This is something that I was encouraging a lot in the beta, and I was kind of surprised that people weren't down for. But there was a bunch of times where we kept playing a consecutive game against the enemy team, and they would just wreck us every time. You know what I mean? We would play offense on one side of the map and lose, and then we would play defense on one side of the map and lose. It was clear they were better than us, but people just kind of kept wanting to play with it. And I think that sucks. I think that dropping in between those is good, but how does that work in ranked, right? Can I just play this? Can I just farm people for ranked, right? Let's say I get in a game and I'm just better than these guys and I win one game and I win the next game.
Oh, that's a good question.
That's a really weird interaction, man.
Yeah, also what makes in Overwatch a match is constituted one circuit of play, an offense to a match in Overwatch isn't one offense and then one defense, but that feels like what it should be for a ranked game, right? That you get one of each for it to be the full circuit.
Yeah, I don't even know. Especially because, I definitely think there are some maps that are much easier on one side than the other. If I random into that, I actually don't know that it's Egypt. It might be Numbani.
It's the Egyptian
map. Yeah. The Egyptian map is so easy on defense compared to what's a hard map or an easy map for offense?
I think London's pretty fair.
London's pretty fair. London, I've had both. London, I've had hardcore attacker victories. There was one match where they basically blew through all of the checkpoints and had 8 minutes, but we just stopped them dead right on the payload delivery. For 8 minutes we held out. And those matches, and honestly, I love those matches. Those matches feel great. I actually think Highway 66 is biased towards the attacker. I don't think I've actually lost on that map attacking. Oh, no, wait, I lost to the Torbjorns. Yeah, that was on that map. But that map I felt like I did really good on attack every time. Oh, no, you know what map? I think it is the Numbani map.
Yeah.
That map I have an easy time with on attack.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah. To be honest, I actually kind of think that the definitions of attack and defense heroes specifically are pretty roughshod. In general,
I think
I don't quite see what makes Hanzo a defense hero. Compared, like Torbjorn, I get it, right? Torbjorn is 1,000,000% a defense hero. Even Bastion, I think, is like pretty hardcore defense. But it feels weird to me that Soldier 76, who is, in my opinion, built around, like he's built in the same kind of zone control that a lot of these defense heroes are built on, isn't a defense hero. He's an offense hero. And Hanzo, who doesn't have zone control basically at all, right? All he has is kind of that offensive arrow thing, is a defense hero. I just don't get that.
I think it's mostly that the defense category is kind of a hodgepodge. Like, defense is this weird combination of like turrets and snipers, and then like Mei and Junkrat. Which is
I think a lot of the like Junkrat has his traps, right? He's got zone control on his traps. I think Mei has zone control on her ultimate, and her wall is obviously super good on defense. I think that who else did you mention? I think every other defense hero basically belongs in that category except for Hanzo, and I feel like Soldier 76 belongs in that category because he drops that healing wave.
So I think that I see what you're saying. I think that Soldier 76 healing wave is supposed to be more dynamic than it's supposed to be less zone control and more kind of like forward recovery. And I think Hanzo is supposed to be a sniper like Widowmaker, and that he controls an area with his arrow. It's just he's a little bit more flexible than Widowmaker, so I think you can option him into the offensive type of stuff, right? Like I feel like with his sonar arrow and with like his sniping kind of like archetype, he's meant to kind of set up and cover an area and keep it covered more mobily than say Widowmaker. But I guess I see what you're coming from.
Yeah, I don't know. Widowmaker also has her trap, I think. I think Widowmaker is another one that kind of blends the lines to a certain extent. I've definitely had good Widowmakers on offense, right, who just pick off the defenders and allow me to kind of, like sit on the payload. But at the end of the day, I think
defense means a defense hero should only be played on defense.
Sure. I just mean in general. Like to me, I think the unifying thing at first to me was that an offense hero carries his whole kit kind of with him, right? He is mobility, but this isn't like, I don't mean like a League of Legends like mobility creep kind of definition for mobility. I mean just mobility in the sense that wherever McCree is, he is exactly as dangerous. Like he is a little walking PBAOE of danger, right? There's nothing that he like. Let's say I'm Torbjorn and I put my turret down in my defensive spawn room and I run out. That's me leaving a huge part of my kit behind, right? If I do that exact same thing with my poison mine, if I do it with my trip mine, my Junkrat snap trappy thing, right? If I do that with any of those champions, I'm leaving behind this aspect of my kit, right? And hypothetically, this is part of kind of where that zone control or whatever like comes into it or whatever. But Pharah, Tracer, Reaper, McCree, these are all people that wherever they are at their most dangerous constantly. Soldier 76 doesn't really. If Soldier 76 drops his healing thing in the spawn room, right? That's that aspect of his kit that he's leaving behind, which is so weird to me. And Hanzo is the exact same way. He doesn't have any. Hanzo is exactly as dangerous as like.
I think you're wrong there. I think if Hanzo fires his sonar arrow in the spawn room, he's leaving a big part of his kit behind. It's just as iterative as.
Yeah, but then we get it. See,
Soldier 76 health pack.
I guess I kind of see that point, because then we're saying, well, if McCree throws his flashbang in the small room, he's leaving that part of his kit behind, kind of thing. When really that's just a cooldown, right? But it's not.
But that's true for everybody we've talked about, right? Like Junkrat's traps are on like 7-second cooldowns. Soldier 76 pack, I don't think is on that long of a cooldown.
It's on a pretty long cooldown. It's over 10 seconds.
Is it?
Which is long to me in that game.
Yeah, no, that would be true. I don't play Soldier 76 because I think he's boring.
Well, I think to a certain extent it's also about like lingering effects, which is the weird part about it, right? The difference between Flashbang and to me,
the Sonar Arrow is a lingering effect too.
Yeah, I don't know for some reason. Well, I get that. I get that kind of intellectually. It just feels weird. Because it also feels like it's just as good on defense, if not better. Because the defense is when people get, like, hold up to a certain extent. Man, I don't even know. I don't even know anymore. It's just inconsistent is my point. It's really inconsistent.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel that. I feel like the offense-defense hero are fuzzy. I think tank and support are much stronger roles, and
even there, you have people like Symmetra, who really doesn't feel like a support in the same way that Mercy does.
Yeah. Actually, I feel like Symmetra is like the big exception in that category. I feel like that might be just Symmetra, like learning.
I think they were just like looking for support heroes almost at that point. Because the weird thing about Symmetra to me is that she's not a defense hero. She is so good on defense, right? Like when you get those huge like turret things, walking into those sucks. Like,
I think part of it might just be like learning how Symmetra works. Like, I think that everybody just isn't using her shields right or something. Like there's some fundamental aspect that is missing there. It's like, when somebody says, "Well, we have a Symmetra, but that's not a real support," is like there's either some gameplay facet we're missing that we're missing because I can't believe it's that much of a misstep.
Yeah, I don't know. It's also weird because I also think Torbjorn is very supporty with his like
his armor packs.
His armor. You know what I mean? Like
him and Symmetra are like two sides of the same mirror, right? Like,
yeah, that's my point, right? Like I feel as though Torbjorn and Symmetra are very similar champions, but one of them is to support, the other one's is not. Hey, kind of whatever. I also think that they're, like bleeding these lines a little bit is kind of fine. It's whatever.
Yeah.
I almost wish that they would introduce like a secondary role, almost like League, because like I think Zarya is a tank / support.
I think Roadhog's almost like a tank / assassin. Like he lives for the pick.
Well, I think Roadhog is actually a very interesting champion because he's almost kind of the platonic ideal of like equally as useful on offense and as defense. And I don't think other champs feel to lean to me like one way or the other, right? And then you kind of have Roadhog, who I'm just kind of like, man, he's good on both. Like, I don't think that there's one that he's good on and one that he's bad on. In the same way that I think Winston is a defensively kind of like he's like a defensively
he's got the zone control with his shield.
Exactly, and I think Zarya is an offensively angled tank because she moves up with her shield, I don't know. I think these classes are interesting, and I almost actually kind of secretly wish that they would see, because I almost kind of feel as though the offense-defense thing is a poor way to frame it. I kind of wish they would have, like, assassins where I wish they would have, like, the Tracer, Genji, right? Man, I don't even know. I guess I would put McCree in there.
Yeah.
But like these, these assassin kind of champs, and like these sniper kind of champs on the other side. And they even have that, right? Like the team tells you when you don't have a sniper. It tells you when you don't have a quote unquote builder.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just hope that they rough up and shore out their tanks and supports. I definitely think that there could be more.
Yeah. I mean, like, in particular, there are 5 champions in every category except for support, where there's only 4.
Yeah.
So hopefully...
Wait, really? I thought there were 6 champions on offense and defense.
Let me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And there are 5 tanks and 4 supports. So, yeah.
Yeah.
2 supports and a tank would be nice.
It would be nice. Oh, also D.Va, right? D.Va's the champion I kind of forget about. Some of these tanks are...
I don't understand D.Va. A lot of people play her, but I just can't.
She's kind of almost... I wish there was more CC in this game. It feels very weird to me that there isn't more CC on the tanks, right? Which is to say, like, Roadhog... I guess, does Winston have a slow when he lands on you with his
I have no idea.
I guess he has a knockback when he hits you on his ult. And then
Reinhardt's gonna
knocks you down.
Also, he pins you.
Also, he pins you. And then what does Zarya have? I don't think Zarya has anything.
Her ult.
Oh, you're right. The gravity field. Okay, actually, I guess they're better at it than I thought. Because to me, the difference between a tank and like a bruiser or whatever is CC, right? Darius doesn't have a lot of CC, but he has a lot of damage. Nautilus has a lot of damage, or has a lot of CC, not a lot of damage. I think that's a really easy. That's just like a really easy kind of dichotomy to set up in a game like this to kind of separate out your tanks from your like offense and defense heroes. And I think I guess they have it a little bit better than I thought. But yeah, I guess D.Va doesn't really have anything. She has the defensive steroid of her like projectile blocker.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just as a champion, as a hero, she's weird to me. Like, you know, you can't use any of her you can't shoot while using any of her abilities. Honestly, the thing I think that's the neatest is kind of her like in and out of mech dichotomy. But like, I don't know. I'm not very good at her.
See, even that I don't think is all that good because whenever I see a D.Va out of the mech, I'm like, that is weak. Kill it. You know what I mean? Like, that's just a weaker version of D.Va. D.Va's only dangerous when she's in her mech, it feels like. Though I do think D.Va's kind of like the naturally tankiest of the heroes, which actually makes sense because I think most of her health pool is armor. Which we haven't even talked about, but
yeah,
the armor that works really well for her because I've been just like brutalized by like D.Va Mercy combos where you just can't chew through the D.Va and she's getting in your face and shooting you with like shotguns. It's rough.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I think just to touch on that for a second, the shield. The shield armor system is neat. I don't know how it'll play out in the long term, like understanding that dichotomy, but like, you know, shields regen, armor does some minor damage reduction, and you know, white health is white health. I think it's a cool like kind of thing in the design belt for the game.
I super incredibly agree. I think it's a big deal, and I want I'm excited to see it play up. I've played one of the reasons I like playing Zarya as a tank is because she kind of has like the pop and stop version of tanking because she comes in, she soaks some damage, you know, she soaks through her shield, right? You know, she puts on a barrier, she does some damage, she, you know, and then she hangs out for a minute, lets the shield regen and gets back into the thick of it, right? Whereas you have other, you know, like where you have other champions who have, when I'm Reinhardt and I'm at full health and I have all of my armor, right? I play that version of Reinhardt very differently and I use my barrier more aggressive, you know, like I just play that version of Reinhardt differently than when my armor has been chewed through, and I think that's interesting. I'd like to see that played up more. Obviously, I think almost all of the tanks are. 3 of the tanks are armor tanks. 1 of them is shield. That's Zarya, and then there's Roadhog,
which is just a shit ton of health.
A shit ton of health in that big health regen steroid.
Yeah, oh man, that's so good. It's 300 freaking health. That's like more health than that's like twice the amount of health that Tracer has. Like, and it's on like a very short cooldown. It's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, I think health pools is a great way that they can use. I think it's true in League, right? Like base stats, but it's a great way to change up and change around how champs work. For instance, I think that Tracer having 150 health and Reaper having 250 health, there's a noticeable difference there. And I think that's a big deal to playing each of them individually, because you know what, on Reaper you're gonna have to, you don't have the same kind of like mobility juking tricks that that Tracer has. You're gonna have to just soak a certain amount of that to get your shotgun blasts off.
Yeah. Yep. But I think that's about all the time we have.
Yeah, we did burn our time talking about Overwatch.
Yeah. Well, if you want to watch us play some tabletop games, you can watch us at twitch.tv/SomeDerpsPlayGames. You can email us about this or anything else you want to at SomeDerpsPlayGames@gmail.com. You can follow us. You can like our Facebook page. You can follow us on Twitter. You can comment on the SoundCloud. You can do anything that you want. Please subscribe if you would. Yeah. Do you have anything else you want to mention, buddy? Links will all be in the description.
No, I think we're solid. I think we're good.
All right. Until next time, dear listeners.
Until next time, loyal listeners.